Okay. Greetings and welcome to the 11th episode of our live series Ichi-go Ichi-e, Season 1, a show where we discuss and present insights about growth, self-improvement, skill development, and awareness. The show is brought to you by Team Bertho and Yes Girls Movement Bangladesh Girls Guide. I'm your host, just as always, Fahmina Foy Shemanti. As I have always said to our regular viewers, it's always good to have your presence on our show. And to the ones who are catching our show today for the very first time, we hope you will find something from us worth sticking around in our following ventures. Before we jump into our regular setting, a big note on awareness needs to be raised. Gender prejudice has since forever been fueling acts of violence against women and girls in both rich and poor countries alike. One in every three women has been abused in their lifetime. Since the pandemic shows they experienced some sort of violence and are more likely to face food insecurity. Only 1 in 10 women said that victims would go to police for help. Gender-based violence can and must be prevented at all cost. Stopping this violence starts with believing in survivors, adopting comprehensive and inclusive approaches that tackle the root causes, transform harmful and social norms, and empower women and girls. With survivor centered, essential services across policing, justice, health, and social sectors, and gender based violence. The United Nations is marking the 16 days of activism against gender based violence from 25th November, which is commemorated as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women annually to 10 December 2021 under the global theme set by the UN Secretary General's Unite campaign, Orange the World and Violence Against Women Now. We in Team Bertho stand with solidarity with the survivors of gender based violence and the activists working diligently to fight it. We have someone just as that today as our show for the guest, as our guest for the show. She has been supporting survivors of sexual abuse and young people suffering from poor mental health for over 7 years and dedicated her past 5 years to helping other young people coping with and recovering from the effects of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse through the charity organization Safeline as a peer mentor and ambassador of the said organization. Her involvement at the organization has inspired countless young people who have suffered abuse, and by sharing her own experience of abuse, has had a direct effect of improving their health and well-being. She has developed into an amazing ambassador for young people with her drive, determination, and tenacity to make a difference. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Córa-Laine Moynihan, to talk about sexual abuse and noticing and identifying the signs. Hello, Cora.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today.
It's really nice to meet you. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I've been really looking forward to this session all day, so I'm just ecstatic to be here overall. And how have you been today as well?
So have we because well, I have been very excited as well. Because this is such an important point that you're going to raise today, such an important point that you're going to talk about, especially people of our age and people are younger than our age. They're going to have so much points to note from you today. So I've been very excited as well. So I'm just not going to, prolong this any longer. So I'm just going to hand the reins on to you, and you can conduct the session the way you please.
Thank you. So I will start with kind of reintroducing myself as well after your fantastic introduction. I'm Cora. It's a pleasure to be speaking with all of you today. I am a student ambassador for a UK-based specialised charity called Safeline, who supports survivors of sexual abuse. And what I'm going to be talking with you about today is raising awareness of the signs of sexual abuse and what to do when you spot those in someone and how to provide them support. So is it okay if we could get my PowerPoint up, please? I always love to include visuals because I'm a very visual person. So we are starting with some statistics. Oh, sorry, we're back at the intro slide. So yes, that's exactly what I just said we're going to be looking at today. Can we go to the next slide, please? So before we begin, I would just like to give a little self-care note in that we are going to be talking about quite difficult topics today surrounding sexual abuse. So if this is a trigger point for you or a subject that makes you quite uncomfortable, or if any slides we talk about makes you want to take a step back, please do, and do come back in a few minutes times, or just at any point take some time for yourself, because of course it is a very difficult subject we're talking about. And next slide, please. So statistics. In the UK, 1 in 4 women are survivors of rape or sexual abuse, and 1 in 6 men have been targets of the same types of abuse, which is a horrible statistic to think about. And that is just the UK. Imagine how horrible the statistics could be worldwide. And that is just the ones that are reported. There are so many people that do not come forward with the abuse that they experience, so that statistic is not accurate in the first place. Next slide, please. And again, 8 million women and 5 million men in the UK experience abuse. And just like I said before, that's only reports of abuse that are given to the police in the UK. So many people go along with their daily lives without ever reporting the abuse they experience out of fear, embarrassment, and shame. And that's something that today's session I'm hoping that we can change. Next slide, please. So, without further ado, what is sexual abuse? Now, a lot of people don't actually know what it is, or don't understand what the term really encompasses. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So I want you to take a few minutes whilst we're discussing today to write down what you define as sexual abuse, what has influenced your definition and your view of sexual abuse, and just kind of reflect on why you have this definition for this subject. And I'll just give you a few moments there whilst I give you my definition and the official definition, which is an act of physical, psychological, and emotional violation in the form of a sexual act inflicted on someone without their consent. It can involve forcing or manipulating someone to witness or participate in any sexual acts. Now, this definition of sexual abuse is the one that is mainly used in the UK. It is one I believe as well, but sexual abuse can be defined differently by different people, different cultures, and different countries. I've been an advocate for survivors of sexual abuse for many years now, so I take a more formal view of defining sexual abuse, whereas someone else can view it as being forced into sexual acts without consent, and will also see different types of sexual abuse as being defined as sexual abuse, such as being forced to kiss someone that you don't want to, or being touched in a way that you don't want to, in intimate manners. And that changes from person to person, but overall this is what we define sexual abuse as in the UK. Next slide, please. So who commits abuse? Now, this is a very big question, because a lot of the time people will have a stereotypical abuser in their mind. In the UK, I know personally, a lot of the time in our education, we're taught to believe it is a straight white man. And that's not true. Sexual abuse can be committed by anyone, men, women, teenagers, other children to other children. There is no stereotype for who an abuser can be. They could be someone who is the center of an entire community. You believe them to be friendly, amazing, role models to other young people or adults. And in actual fact, they could be an abuser. So one thing about discussing sexual abuse is to not pigeonhole the idea of an abuser to one stereotype. And unfortunately, you have to be very open-minded when reports come in, because it could be anyone of any age, gender, race, sexuality, anyone. So why do you think we stereotype abusers? Take a few moments to think about that, along with your own definition of sexual abuse. Next slide, please, if that's okay. So whilst you think about that, I'm also going to bring up some risks in the real world that can occur and how sexual abuse can occur. So we're currently in a very digital age, and we are connected with people across the world through the internet. So things like dating apps, social media, all of those online communities are potential risks for experiencing sexual abuse, because people can easily get in touch with each other, share inappropriate images, groom young children into doing what they want and being unconsensually intimate with them. But in the everyday, you can also experience risks of sexual abuse in taxis, at jobs, bars, even in the workplace. And even your friends could turn out to be abusers, and that's not your fault if you don't know that. It's just that the risk is always there, and it's always down to the abuser choosing to abuse you, in that the fault lies with them. Next slide, please. So, how do we notice the signs of abuse in other people or in ourselves? So, with adults, quite often they will have changes to their sleep schedule. They'll lose sleep a lot of the time because they're struggling to come to terms with the abuse they experience. They may withdraw from their communities, from their social circles, from families, and they may also self-harm as a coping mechanism to deal with the abuse. Another manner in which they will kind of cope with their abuse is by being very apprehensive about relationships, and in particular avoiding interacting with particular people or a certain someone who might have been their abuser. So it's always good to keep an eye out for some of these signs. Although it may not be sexual abuse that they are experiencing, these sort of signs can also hint towards your friend being in need and needing support. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we've missed a slide there. I might have accidentally deleted it. Is there one before that? One should. And then the next one, please. Okay, I've accidentally deleted a slide. Very sorry, everyone. But I was also going to discuss with you about the signs in children. And quite often, these signs in children can be seen because they will have very mature behaviors for their age. So they'll talk about inappropriate things like sexual interactions or have sexual urges and try to force them onto other young people. They'll also experience very similar signs and symptoms as adults, in that they'll self-harm, withdraw, and their behaviors will start changing very much, and they'll become struggling with mental health disorders like anxiety, depression, and also PTSD. So that was a slide that I accidentally deleted, and I apologize in advance for that. So what are some of the impacts of sexual abuse? So we've now identified the signs, but how can that impact a person in their daily lives? So a couple of impacts I have listed on this slide here, but the main ones I'm going to point out are about depression, eating disorders, and other mental health issues, because a lot of the time people cannot cope with the abuse they have experienced, and it will cause them to develop unhealthy habits, or their mental state will really struggle to move on from that situation. So particularly with post-traumatic stress disorder, survivors will experience flashbacks or will experience panic attacks, extreme anxiety towards triggers that remind them of their abuse. They'll also have low self-esteem sometimes, in that because of their abuse, a lot of the time they would have been manipulated, they would have been made to feel ashamed and embarrassed by the abuse that was forced on them, and will believe that it was something intrinsically wrong with them that caused this abuse to occur, and ultimately impact their self-esteem, which then goes on to impact their relationships, their academic successes, as well as their work life and even their health. So I have also listed other impacts here, which you can have a little read of there and kind of consider and have a think about. So I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And then I think it's okay to move on to the next slide now. So one major thing that isn't spoken about when it comes to sexual abuse is the ethnic barriers. So I know that's a lot of text on the slide there for you, but it was something I felt was really important to discuss, especially because it's such an international audience we have here today. And it's very similar to the idea of a stereotype of an abuser. There is very much a stereotype of a victim or survivor in that it's women. That will be the typical idea someone has of a survivor of abuse. It will be a woman, usually a white woman, who will come forward and report their abuse. But in actual fact, you get many male survivors. You have many survivors who are of minority ethnics as well. But the reason that they don't often come forward is because there is an even bigger stigma around reporting abuse in those communities. And it's, again, to do with stereotypes and that people do not feel comfortable to admit that something so horrible happened to them, or they have been made to feel in their own communities, cultures, or countries to feel like reporting abuse is not something they can do. It's not something that will go anywhere and that they shouldn't really have experienced it in the first place. But that is entirely wrong. Anyone can experience abuse, and it is not their fault in any way. And it is stigma and shame that is causing people to feel uncomfortable with speaking up, especially about when it's child sexual exploitation or when they were assaulted as a young person. So quite a lot of people, particularly with males, they are made to feel discouraged or less able to talk about their experience because of the whole idea of a man being strong, being invincible. They shouldn't be made to feel weak and broken in a way. But again, that is all wrong, and anyone who has ever experienced abuse should feel able to come forward about it and find support. Next slide, please. So quite recently in the UK, we are dealing a lot with drinks being spiked when going to bars and clubs. And this is an issue of particularly women being targeted, but there have also been men who have experienced it, in that a drug will be slipped into their drink, or, as it has become a big problem at the moment, people are being injected with drugs, other people's blood, and being given sexually transmitted diseases through these injections. And again, being spiked is an unconsensual act. They have not asked to have that drug. They have not consented to being injected, and it is a violation all the same. And it can happen to anyone and be done by anyone, anywhere as well. And the signs of being spiked are very much seeing someone as being extremely drunk to a point where they're disorientated, they can't walk, they're confused, they're feeling sick. And as soon as those signs come up, please take your friend, or if it's yourself, to a hospital or to a police station where they will be safe and supported. Next slide, please. So, I've mentioned about getting support for survivors numerous times, and this can be either for yourself or for a friend or family member or someone that is close to you. Next slide, please. So how can we support survivors? Whenever I've delivered these sorts of presentations, one of the big questions I'm always asked at the end is, how can I support a family member? How can I support a friend when they've experienced some sort of abuse or if they're struggling? So here are my answers. So it takes a lot of strength and courage to talk about these issues in the first place, and a lot of the time, a lot of trust between two people. So please listen to your friend or a survivor when they're talking to you. Just let them vent to you about their experience. Let them just talk without interruption, without questions, and without guiding the conversation. Let them say what they need to say without your influence. So part of being an advocate or an ally is that you fight for your friends and families when they're struggling. You are there for them, you listen for them, and you give them a shoulder to rely on. And I do really recommend doing further reading and research. So I've done quite a bit of research for this presentation because I mainly know all my information from the UK. So I wanted to see if I could make this presentation more universal for anyone who's international. And that was really eye-opening for me because I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before. So you could literally just be at home and want to find out more about how you can support someone who is a survivor, or if you want to find out about services in your area. The internet is your best friend in that regard. There are so many papers, there's so many legislation and policies out there that you can read up about and see how you can cause change in your area to make it a safer place for survivors. And finally, take any discussions you have or any support you give at the pace of the survivor. Don't force them into doing stuff they're not ready for, as it is a healing journey they are going on, and it is done at a personal pace, a pace that is one that they can cope with in that moment. And next slide, please. So before I finish this presentation, I'd like to give you a bit more information about Safeline. Now, Safeline is a national charity in the UK. We currently do not have any international services, but that's not saying that we're not hoping for that sort of expansion in the future. And we never turn someone away without knowing that they have a support service to go to or some sort of support ready for them other than Safeline if you are international. So that is a bit of background information all about Safeline. It is around 26 years old now, and it originally started up as a little project by our founder, who created a poetry book to reflect and describe her experiences of sexual abuse in order to raise money for survivors and provide them a support service they can turn to in their times of need. And it is, particularly in the UK, it is focused on male survivors and providing them support. So we have a national helpline for male survivors, but we have expanded now to providing a helpline to everyone. So women, men, children in the Warwickshire area where I am from. But we're hoping to expand that in the years to come. Next slide, please. So here are a few more of our services that we provide. Relating back to our origins, we started with a poetry book, and we have stayed focused on creative elements of providing support. So we do provide counselling, that can be one-to-one or in a group, and we also do drama and art therapy. So I particularly, my background is that I was a young person Safeline supported, and I went through drama and art therapy, and it is my favourite thing I have ever done therapy-wise, because you're not forced to talk, you're not forced to kind of just word vomit your entire traumas or experiences. Instead, you are given art and drama as a way to express how you're feeling and to work through all of those emotions that make you feel like you're in the middle of a tornado. And it was really empowering for me as well, because I got to draw, which is a passion of mine, and I got to express myself in a way that I never could before. And that links into our education and prevention services, which is what I have worked with for the past 7 years as being an advocate. And through these projects, we have helped many young survivors and young people at risk to develop their confidence, their self-esteem, and to also educate them about keeping themselves safe. And these projects have come in the form of drama performances, music performances, creating artwork, also doing sports, and even an employability course to help them see a future ahead of them, even though times are dark in that moment. And we also do personal and social development courses for everyone. So I've done a lot of these courses. I've done peer mentoring and leadership. I've also done computing, which links into what I'm doing as a career at the moment. I write manuals for a tech company, which I never thought I'd do. But I did this computing course with Safeline that allowed me to see I had a little bit of a passion for coding, which I never thought I would, coming from a creative background, which was fantastic. And next slide, please. So our final service we provide is the independent sexual violence advisors and children's independent sexual violence advisors. They do the same thing other than who they support. So the ISVAs support adults whilst CHIVSVAs support children. And they will provide support to these survivors by giving them practical advice from the outset and throughout the criminal justice process. So they focus on the reporting process of abuse, because that really is a very difficult time for survivors when they do choose to report. And I'm not going to say it's easy, because a lot of the time it will be reliving that trauma all over again just to get justice. And sometimes, unfortunately, they are not able to get justice against their abusers. But ISVA and CHISVA service is there for them throughout every step of the way. And that is a service that Safeline provides that we are very proud to offer. And next slide, please. So this is where I did a bit of research, because I know we have an international audience, and unfortunately Safeline cannot provide massive support to internationals at the moment, but we're still hoping we can in the future and working towards that. But what I have found for anyone who is concerned about a family member, friend or colleague, or perhaps yourself experiencing abuse, then I recommend going to the Rape Crisis Network Europe, or just Rape Crisis in general on Google, because they will highlight all the different services that are available in your local area to get support. And if either of those cannot help you, please do just reach out to me or reach out to Safeline, and we will try to find a service in your area that can provide you support, even though we're unable to. So I believe that is now the end of my presentation. I hope you all have learned something and had some time to think about the questions I asked you throughout the session. And I think in return, it is now your chance to ask me any questions you may have. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Cora. That was a very informative session you just conducted, because there are so many things that, kids and women of all age, even men, go through every day every day, and something, it is actually very true that we are very familiar with women getting abused sexually or harassed sexually like every day, but men don't come up with it, because there's this notion about them being strong. And one thing that you noted completely in a very beautifully, that there's nothing, it's not related that how strong a person is and if they can be sexually abused or not. I mean, take Terry Cruz's incident into a discussion. So thank you very much. Today our session is actually a little bit shorter, so that we are not going to be having any question answer session, although this topic is something that is that actually screams for, because people will have questions. Almost everyone is a survivor, which is a very sad thing to say, but it is true. But we're not having any question answer sessions today. But thank you very much for being here, and it was very informative. And we love to have you next time in any of our next episodes again. And if you would have time in your schedule for us, that would be wonderful.
Yes, it would be a pleasure to come back, and thank you for having me. I'm glad that I could talk about this all with you, as it is such an important topic, and especially over the past COVID pandemic, so many people have experienced abuse in silence, being trapped with their abusers in their homes. And it is so important that we
Exactly.
break that stigma.
And Gemma Jones just commented that not getting justice is so difficult. It can be so challenging trying to find a point of closure. But completely agree with you, Gemma. And you are a part. So we have seen your life lesson and your story in Human Heroes in Team Bertho. So I'm guessing that you are already familiar with Team Bertho's work. Is there something that you wanted to share or you wanted to add about Team Bertho's projects, or anything that you wanted to say?
I think personally, I absolutely love what your project is all about, in that you're sharing life lessons, particularly, which is something I've been involved with, that so many people can learn from. And it's not just your typical, like, oh, we'll have a glass of water every day. It's deep. It's something that gets people thinking, and a lot of the time gets them asking questions that they wouldn't usually ask themselves from the day to day. And that's something I think is brilliant in general. And I can't wait to see what you guys keep doing, as I've made sure to like follow you guys on every single social media. I'm keeping up with everything you're doing, and it's just, it in a way is encouraging me as well to keep doing what I'm doing, because it's by making changes in the world that we're making it a better place, and you guys are just inspiring me to keep doing it.
Well, you are doing a wonderful job yourself. I mean, for what you've been doing for the past 7 years, and then your involvement with Safeline for the past 5 years. I mean, you're already doing a wonderful job, and we wish you all the very best to keep going ahead and keep helping people, and be the wonderful person that you are. And it was a really lovely encounter having you here with us. Thank you very much. So, dear audience, I hope the points and the informations that Cora shared with us today answers a lot of your questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't hold a question and answer session for today, which we do usually in our other episodes. And was something of a topic that actually needs a lot of, that raises a lot of questions and needs a lot of answers to be, given. But I hope that that actually answers some of your questions that were lingering into your mind. So anytime you go through any sort of sexual abuse, whether it be in a cyber form, or whether it be in a physical form or a verbal form, just reach out to people who can help. And so that's it for today. We hope to see you in our next episode. Till then, stay happy and stay hopeful. And that's it. Goodbye then.